was perfectly ill with mortification. The father and mother provided a tutor for the young Marquis. This tutor was a man of fashion, and, who knew nothing, of course, could teach nothing to his pupil. Monsieur wished his son to learn Latin. Madame wished him not. Accordingly, they called in as arbiter an author, who was at that time celebrated for some very pleasing works. He was asked to dinner. The master of the house began by asking him, "Monsieur, as you understand Latin and are a courtier—" "I, sir, understand Latin? Not a word," replied the wit. "And very glad I am that I don't, for there is not a doubt but a man always speaks his own language the better when his studies are not divided between that and foreign languages. Look at all our ladies. Is not their vivacity more elegant than that of the man? Their letters, are they not written with 100 times the animation? Now all this superiority they possess from nothing else but their not understanding Latin." "There now, was not I in the right?" said Madame. "I wish my son to be a wit, that he may make a figure in the world. And you see, if he learns Latin, he is inevitably lost. Are comedies or operas played in Latin? In a lawsuit, does anyone plead in Latin? Do we make love in Latin?" Monsieur, dazzled by all this ratiocination, gave his judgment, when it was finally determined that the young Marquis should not lose his time in becoming acquainted with Cicero, Horace, and Virgil. But then what was he to learn? For he must know something. Could he not be shown a little geography? "What would that serve?" replied the tutor. "When Monsieur the Marquis goes to any of his estates, won't the postilions know which way to drive him? They'll certainly take care not to go out of their way. One has no need of a quadrant to travel with, and a man may go from Paris to Auvergne very commodiously, without having the least idea what latitude he is under." "You are right," replied the father, "but I have somewhere heard of a very beautiful science, which is called astronomy, I think." "The more's the pity, then," cried the tutor. "Does anyone regulate himself by the stars in this world? And is it necessary that Monsieur the Marquis should murder himself by calculating an eclipse, when he will find its very point of time in the almanac, a book which will teach him, moreover, the movable feasts and fasts, the age of the moon, and that of all the princesses in Europe?" Madame was entirely of the tutor's opinion. The little Marquis was overjoyed. The father was very much undecided. "What must my son learn, then?" said he. "To make himself agreeable." "If," replied the friend whom they had consulted, "he knows but how to please, he knows everything. That is an art he can learn from his mother without giving the least trouble either to that master or this." At this speech Madame embraced the polite ignoramus, and said to him, "It is very plain, sir, that you are the most learned man in the whole world. My son will owe his entire education to you. However, I conceive that it will be as well if he should know a little of history." "Alas, madame, what is that good for?" replied he. "There is nothing either so pleasing or so instructive as the history of the day. All ancient history, as one of our wits observes, is nothing but a preconcerted fable. And as for modern, it is a chaos which no one can disintegrate. What does it signify to Monsieur, your son, that Charlemagne instituted the 12 peers of France, and that his successor was a stutterer?" "Nothing was ever better said," cried the tutor. "The spirits of children are overwhelmed with a mass of useless knowledge. But of all absurd sciences, that which in my opinion is the most likely to stifle the spark of genius is geometry. This ridiculous science has for its object surfaces, lines, and points, which have no existence in nature. 10,000 crooked lines are, by the mere twist of imagination, made to pass between a circle and a right line that touches it, although in reality it is impossible to draw a straw between them. In short, geometry is nothing but an execrable joke." Monsieur and Madame did not understand too much of what the tutor said, but they were entirely of his opinion. "A nobleman like Monsieur the Marquis," continued he,